Ghost stories are interesting and not always make-believe. Over the last 150-odd years, stories of ghosts in our nation's capital, in the White House to be precise, have surfaced. Some say that among those spirits of the departed, Abraham Lincoln's vestige has been seen, and some say that the tall 16th President of these United States has been seen, on numerous occasions, standing pensively looking out of one of the Oval Office windows. A sad, weary, even forlorn expression furrows his face. They say he looks worried, much like he did during those terribly dark years of the Civil War. I've heard tell that the ghost of Daniel Webster, whom Lincoln greatly admired, often returns to ask, "How stands the Union?" Well, this may or may not be so, and it may or may not be so that Lincoln can be seen at an Oval Office window. But if it were so, I fancy that Lincoln might ask his concerns about the state of the Union and about the state of the American people. Are we honest in what we know? Are we trying to succeed in temporal endeavors more than in trying to live up to the light we have? Are we grateful to and dependent upon the mercies of God? Are we honoring and supporting and sustaining the Constitution of this Union? Let's close our eyes and imagine that window pane at the White House, and see if we can picture Mr. Lincoln and discern what he might be thinking. What would you say to Mr. Lincoln? How would you answer him if he were here and asked, "How stands the Union?" What are you doing for her? Now open your eyes.
Oh, you were here. Excuse me, I was lost in thought. I was pondering the dilemmas we face here as a nation. Perhaps you too have concerns about the state of the Union. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We will be remembered in spite of ourselves. Fiery trials through which we now pass will light us down and honor or dishonor the latest generation. We say we were for the Union. The world will not forget that we say this. We hold the power and bear the responsibility. We may meanly lose or nobly save the last best hope of Earth. Now, it's my opinion that we can learn more from the past than we can the present. And if we're to weather the dilemmas that we now have, we must learn from the past. So I felt that I need to talk to you about what I've learned throughout my life, how it helped me, and how it might help you too. I was born in a log house in Kentucky, February 12, 1809. We were poor, and that necessitated hard work just to survive in the wilderness. It was a meager existence. Why, there were sorrows, happy times, excitements, and despair. Now, my sister and I walked to school where we learned reading and writing and ciphering. Well, then our mother died, which brought us great sorrow. But our father remarried, and she became like our own mother, and her children like our own brothers and sisters. We moved and attended school again, where we learned more. I became an avid reader then, even set my hand to poetry. I read the Bible several times, loved to borrow books. One day I borrowed a book. It was about George Washington, one of my personal heroes. I'd read it at night, and then, as I slept, I set it between the logs of the wall. One night it rained, and it soaked the book. I dried it out, finished reading it, and returned it to the owner. I felt badly that I had caused so much damage to his property. So I told him I'd pay him for another copy. And I worked long, hard hours for several days. My joints ached, my back hurt. We needed the money desperately, but it was the right thing to do. But there were happy times also. Stepmother loved to clean house. She was always telling the children to wipe their feet, not bring mud into the house. One day, an idea for a joke crossed my mind. I took one of the younger brothers and tracked him through a mud puddle. When his feet were literally coated with mud, I walked him into the house, up the wall, and across the ceiling. We had great fun. I helped clean it up, though, when stepmother was sufficiently distraught. Later, my older sister died. And that brought me much sorrow. The humor? Why, the humor was essential to soften the trials and sorrows we have. Balm to help us make it through the meager existence of hard work and suffering there in the wilderness. Now that you're here, I have some papers here at my desk that I prepared some things I thought that you might be interested in that would help you with the turmoil you now face. As I got to be an older person, became an attorney, I found humor was very beneficial when I was in the courts. Oftentimes, between cases, I'd have to stand outside, not wanting to waste my time. I told humorous stories. Once the judge even adjourned his court just so they could all come hear my humorous stories outside. And as a circuit riding attorney, those long distances between those towns became monotonous. And so, if I met a fellow traveler, a good joke helped banish the boredom. I do wish I could tell a humorous story now and ease my burdens. But alas, I can't. We did have other experiences when I was young. I had 2 adventures down in Mississippi, on Flatboat, New Orleans. There, my companion and I escaped harm. We saw our first city, and we saw our first Negroes. They were being sold like animals. Now, the slavers had no regard for love or family unity. It was abhorrent to me the way they treated those people. And I did everything in my power thereafter to alleviate the condition that the Negro found themselves in. I didn't sit idle by just looking at the scenery as I went. One time we ran across rapids and low water. We couldn't get our flatboat across for several days. I thought on the situation, thinking that others might have the same problem, and came up with an invention. I drew out plans, applied for, and obtained a patent for my device, but it never sold.